Hello and welcome to the Tennessee Golden Hour. My name is Matt Tullis.
I'm Beth Moore.
It's good to see you, Beth.
You as well, Matt.
And I'm really excited about this time. We've got Josh Franks here with us,
It's gonna be good.
and we're going to be talking about ministry and calling.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you could share, when was that time that you first felt God leading you into full-time Christian service?
I was 17. It was my junior year in high school in the spring, and I just remember at the end of a sermon feeling the Lord stirring and that I needed to just surrender my future, my plans, and for whatever He might have for me. And so that's when I really began thinking about what that could look like.
That's great.
What about you?
I was really called to ministry when I was like 16.
Uh-huh.
But when I really felt like that I might be able to do ministry was when I understood that there were a lot of different things besides being a preacher, because I could never really do that. It was a Sunday night, and we had this kind of a comedy music team come, and I had never had fun in church before that day. And then I said, maybe I can do this.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
And Josh Franks?
Yes, sir.
We're excited to have you.
Thank you for having me.
We've been wanting to do this since 1996. So
I was a baby.
Yes. So it was good that you had a chance. You just finished some meetings with some folks kind of shaping the ministry, right?
Yes, sir. We just finished a committee meeting.
And so tell me, because you were a late bloomer in ministry, tell us how you got called into ministry.
Yeah, my call to ministry was a little bit different. I ran from it for 2 decades or more. I remember being a little boy, and I was sitting in my pastor's office. I had put gum in a little girl's hair and knowing he was called to ministry then. This wasn't going to do it. So my background's medical. I spent 12 years doing MRI and CT at Murray Regional Medical Center. And I think it was when my first child was born, my oldest son. I was sitting in a hospital room, and my wife looked at me. She said, "What are you thinking about?" I guess I was kind of lost. And it just hit me that I could never expect him to be something I'm not. And just that thought changed my life. And I began to grow closer to the Lord. And my pastor just sort of relentlessly kept giving me opportunities. I started out, he asked me to be on staff as the director of prayer ministries. And my default position's always no. Was it going to be in a ministry? Was I going to do that? And, through prayer. And I was called into that. And then he come back, wanted me to be the deacon. And I pray about that. And we did that. But it was July the 26th in 2011. My wife and I were having a season of prayer and fasting because I was really wrestling with the call to ministry. And I was sitting on my tailgate at Murray Regional Medical Center on my lunch break when God gave me scripture, Luke 10:2, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. And I wrote in my journal, "Lord, I'm in wherever you send me." And then I got to go tell my wife, because she didn't marry a pastor, right? And I'm freaking out because we got a mortgage, everything. I got a whole other life, a whole other career, and I get my parents to keep our boys. And I fixed her this dinner, which I'm sure was terribly cooked, but it's the thought that counts. And so I have this big dinner at the house, and I say, "We need to talk." And I say, "Okay, God's called me into ministry." And she just never stopped eating. She said, "I know what took you so long."
Wow.
And so that was the moment that I surrendered. We'll be all in wherever God send us.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your journey from that time to being on staff here at Tennessee Baptist Mission Board.
Yeah, from that time I went back to school and I did my master's online while I was still working at the hospital. And then my first church of pastor was downtown Franklin. It was a Walker Memorial Baptist. Okay. And then I was at First Baptist Church in Brewston from 2016 to 2021. And I started as a Harvestfield 2 leader here in 2021, August 2021. It's almost 4 years.
Okay.
So it was a smooth path, your first couple of pastorates, right?
I tell everybody this. I will never be loved more than I was at our second church, and I will never be hated more than I was at our first one. my entire life, I will live in between two extremes. Yeah. Our first pastor was very difficult, and our second one could not have been better.
So what are some of the lessons that you learned in those first couple of pastorates? Just a couple of nuggets.
Yeah, a couple of nuggets. You're not as bad as you think you are, and you're not as good as people say you are either. You are what God says you are, not what other people say you are. That was one of the big things. And the other one was, you don't know everything. There's a lot of young guy, dumb guy stuff, mistakes to be made in ministry.
Yeah.
Cool. So tell us a little bit about, you've transitioned. So you started out as a harvest field leader, but now you have transitioned into a new role as we kind of step into a new era at the Tennessee Baptist Mission Board.
Hey, and if I can annotate that question, Harvest Field leader we've got six Harvest Fields?
Six geographic and one
that's,
ethnic.
Ethnic. So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So the transition happened as during the Acts 2:17 process. They identified our different organizational priorities and the need for new leaders. The need for a pipeline in every church was identified as one of the top priorities. And so when we reorganized that, I went back to New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary to get my doctorate. And my doctorate was in strategic leadership. And I've always been passionate about leadership and raising up the next generation of leaders. And so sort of a natural progression. I felt like God was calling me out of the Harvest Field ministry and into this role to invest in the next generation of leaders. And so we just went through the process that way.
So you've got this thing called the 931 initiative?
The Acts 931.
Is it Acts 931?
Well, it's just not 931 leadership.
So tell me a little bit about what this Acts 931 initiative is.
So Acts 931 leadership is a sermon series. It's a church campaign that's going to launch at Summit this year. It's got a 40-day devotional to help pastors pray for God to raise up leaders in their church, 5 sermons for help pastors preach on God's design for leadership, and to call God's people to respond obediently to pursue ongoing leader development. I've had several guys pilot it already. I preached it last year. I had 221 people make a commitment to pursue ongoing leader development.
Wow.
6 committed to some type of vocational ministry. For example, there were some deacons that said, listen, we can preach and fill the pulpit. And some of these small bivocational churches had 2 that we hired on staff out of that at the church I was doing interim. Eric Nickel, who's the pastor at Connection Columbia, has staffed 3 churches completely internally.
Wow.
He planted his church and staffed it himself, and then he planted a church in Linville and staffed it through his church, and he's replanted First Baptist Mount Pleasant. It's Connection Mount Pleasant now. And he's launching a leadership school because he's running out of leaders. And so he was one of the guys that piloted the project for us, and he had 15 people commit to vocational ministry out of his sermon series. And so we're going to make that available to Tennessee Baptists at the Summit this year.
That's great.
So let's back up just a minute, Josh, to talk about what kind of came out of that Acts 2:17 and I guess the state of our churches as far as leadership or needing pastors, but it's not just pastors. So talk a little bit about kind of even the impetus for all of this.
Yeah, it's definitely not just pastors, and it's not. I don't count it as just staff members either. Like it's hard for anybody to find a staff member, a worship leader, a youth pastor, a children's minister. I count gospel leaders as everybody in the church. It's God. God has the design for both men and women to have leadership roles in His church.
Right.
We all have gifting, and we're all expected to use that gifting for the benefit of the entire church. And there's a leadership aspect of that. And so when we're talking about the raising up leaders in the church, we're raising up Sunday school teachers and greeters and AV workers and, people who are behind the scenes and people who are on the stage. I surveyed a number of churches, and only 6% of churches have any kind of defined leader development in their context. Wow. And it's no wonder that we've gotten in the shape we've gotten in. We're just bereft of leaders.
And you've got 6 different aspects of leadership that you're really focusing in on?
No. The six components of that is part of the leader discovery kit.
Okay.
Yeah, that's another thing we're going to launch at the Summit is to help guys recognize who's a leader. Okay. We're really bad about recognizing charisma and elevating charisma over character, and that's not God's design for leadership. Anybody can be a leader regardless of their personality, regardless of how God's equipped them, whether introverted or extroverted. There are 6 sort of components to that. I call them 6 principles that come from Exodus 18. Jethro is the world's first leadership consultant, and he's given Moses his advice on how to, design and format Israel, because Moses is in a mess. He's got all these people out there. They're all complaining to him, and he's solving everything from murder to, stop poking me between siblings. And he's, Jethro comes to him, so what you're doing is not good. And he lays out, these principles. And the first one is the integrity principle. Who you are when nobody's watching is who you are when everybody's watching. And so if we want to invest in leaders, we need to identify people who have integrity, who are the same in public and private. You don't want to elevate somebody who lacks integrity. Second principle is the faithfulness principle. Jesus said, if you can be trusted with a little, you can be trusted with a lot. we have men and women in our churches who are serving faithfully behind the scenes. Maybe the 50-year-old woman who's been in the nursery for 30 years, but she has been there every time for 30 years. Those are people you want to see. And we don't see them a lot, but they're there. She's got integrity. She's faithfully serving with what God's given her. There's the creativity principle. We want people who have ideas. And we're bad as Baptist pastors of treating people who have ideas like they've got the plague. I used to call some of them EGRs, extra grace required.
Yeah.
But there's a difference in people bringing you complaints and people bringing you ideas. We want people who are creative. We want people who have communication skills. That's the fourth one. The clarity principle is what I call it. Some people can explain things in a way that makes the complicated simple. We had an incident in our church one time. Our youth group had outgrown their youth room, and we were putting people in closets, literally. And so we're going to have a simple solution. Let's tear down a wall. And it's a non-load-bearing cinder block wall. And the guys in the church decided, well, we'll just do it. It's not a big deal. Okay, no problem. Well, they show up, they're going to have breakfast, they're going to knock the wall down. Well, we had an engineer in the church, and he was one of the smartest guys that I've ever met. He also made everything as complicated as possible.
Yeah.
And he spent a couple hours trying to map out the most ideal route to dismantle this wall. And a couple of contractors showed up and sent him to the office to get something, and they picked their sledgehammers up. And the time he got back, the wall was down. Like, there's some people who make the complicated simple, and some people make the simple complicated. We want to look for that. Look for the people who can communicate. Teamwork principle. Do they get along with people? Do they elevate people? Because that's God's design. We're all one body. We're multiple parts in one body. We have to be able to work together. And the last one is the growth principle. Leaders who stop growing eventually stop leading. And so by looking for those 6 characteristics, those 6 qualities in people, those are the ones you can invest in. And that's not what the world would normally say that you would look for. That's not the person most people would have in our mind about, well, that's a leader. But if somebody has those 6 things, they have no ceiling.
Yeah, I love that, Josh, because I think specifically in this current generation with social media and, dare we say, Christian celebrity, like charisma seems to be the only qualification for somebody to have a platform. So what would you say to the person that maybe doesn't even want a platform, so they think that they can't be a leader? How would you kind of differentiate between using some of the principles that you've talked about for the young adult who's thinking about ministry and says, I'm not the most charismatic, but...
I would say God sees you, number one. God's gifted you and God's designed you for a purpose. That's the one thing that we need to understand. First, you have a gift, and God expects you to use that gift, and you have to exercise leadership over that. Second thing is not everybody's called to be on stage. And there's a difference. And just because somebody's on stage doesn't make them a leader. And just because somebody has 2 million followers doesn't make them theologically correct either. If their content is more about branding than discipleship, then you're being marketed to, not discipled. And so, the number of followers is irrelevant. Some of the best pastors in the state are guys who have 20 church members. They have 50 church members.
Right.
These are faithful men, and nobody will ever know their name, but heaven does. And they're going to hear, good job, good and faithful servant.
Don't you think that maybe the rising generation is ready for that shift?
Oh, I think so.
Yeah,
100%. I think they're ready for something more authentic than just being marketed to.
Yeah.
For sure.
I was wondering if you could give us, you talked about the unnamed people, but maybe some people in our state that you see that are really doing a good job of leading and raising up other leaders.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So one of the things we've done so far this year is we've built a cohort around Union University of pastors and director of missions who are investing in leaders, and they've created an intern program. But these guys, they've already demonstrated the passion and the ability and the wisdom to do that. So you've got guys like Andy Neely at West Jackson, and Gary Snuffin at Calvary Jackson, and Clay Hallmark at First Lexington, Josh Singfeld at First Milan's a part of that group, Justin Hines at Second Baptist in Union City was a part of that group, Ben Cowell at Brownsville Baptist, and then you have the director of missions, Stan Waffler's part of that. Kevin Ward, who's going to be the new director of missions at Jackson Madison's there, Mike Kempler, an older guy, still passionate about the younger generation, so they've been a part of it. So We got some great guys across the state that are already investing in leaders, and we're just trying to come alongside them and go, how can we help you do what you're already doing at scale?
What are they doing that's maybe different, that stands out, that helps them develop? Like some of those that you mentioned, I know young adults that are coming out of their churches and doing.
Yeah, absolutely. No, number one, they talk about it. Like that is the common denominator in all the churches that are raising up leaders and doing it well. The pastor's passionate about it, and it's part of their common vernacular. It's like Drake Nosko is a great one, and Grace Nashville. And he talks about it all the time. And it's just a part of the conversation in this church. They're expected to lead, and they're expected to call out and be developed that way. So the guys who are passionate about it are doing it well. They always talk about it, and they are always intentional about it. They have a system in place. And the system can vary and they're looking at different things, and they're achieving different goals and different aims, but they're intentional and systematic about doing it. So it's a part of their culture, and they're systematically approaching the problem that already exists.
It seems like over the years that the track has changed. In other words, you go to college, then you go to seminary, and then you go become a pastor or serve on staff. Can you give us some other models that are being used to train leaders other than the conventional path?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was an unconventional path. I went ahead and did my master's while I was scanning patients in MRI. Like I would write papers in between patients and stuff like that. And I think there's a trend there. One of the big things we're leaning into is an apprentice program, specifically for bivocational guys who are going to enter ministry as a second career. I see a lot of young people who are responding to the call, but I also see a significant amount of people in their mid 40s, late 40s going, man, God's got a plan for me. One of my best friends in the world, his name is Bart Blankenship. He's surrendered to a call to ministry. He's probably 47, 48, works at Kellogg's. And so we're designing an apprentice program for him. It's based off of Steve Freeman's model for his D-Man that he did. And it's to equip a guy with practical skills to lead the church. Because you can learn things in seminary about Arianism and other heresies and things, but they don't teach you how to lead a contentious business meeting.
Right.
They don't teach you those kinds of practical ministry skills. And so we're going to be launching, we're piloting it right now, an apprentice program. Next year, we're going to launch it at scale of what are the steps that needs to happen for every Paul to have their Timothy and send that guy out.
So you talked about, ministry pipeline and leadership. It's not just we're looking for lead pastors. We're looking for leaders in our churches. So what are some ways that we're trying to mobilize, or you're hoping to help churches mobilize just the layperson to lead in their area of passion or ministry?
Yeah. Well, the vision is for every church to have growing leaders called to ministry. And so in conjunction with the church campaign we're launching at the summit, we're also launching a leader development path that can be contextualized to every church. And so the church campaign is meant to call God's people to respond obediently. The pathway is the obedient step. And this is what next. And so it's going to be sort of a small group curriculum focus where a pastor might have 10 guys. They meet together on a Wednesday. And by guys, that is a gender neutral guys and girls. And here's a 15-minute video on some topic about leadership. Discuss it. Just walk through. It's going to be 4-tiered. The first level is called the Explorer level. It's just basic leadership concepts, spiritual discipline stuff for the leader to get people an opportunity to just experience leadership. The next level up is going to be an apprentice level where I feel like God's calling me to something too. God is calling me into groups to be a Sunday school teacher. God's calling me to be, a worship leader. God's calling me to some specific area so they can get hands-on experience in that area. The next level will be the journeyman level. These are people who are ready to be sent out. But like I said, my first church was difficult. Didn't have anybody to help me. We don't want to just send people out. We want to support them so that they can be successful.
Right.
And so you still have that third level of you're on your own independently, but you've got this coaching network to help you and support you. And then the last one is the mentor level where now you're reproducing yourself.
So you've mentioned products and this leadership track and this program that you're developing, the things at Summit that they can get their hands on. How much is all this going to cost me if I want to get involved in this.
Well, thank you for your faithfulness to give to the cooperative program and the Golden Offering for Tennessee Missions. It's free.
Amen.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I want to know, as you are looking ahead, like, what is the big, bold prayer that you're asking the Lord for Tennessee in this kind of
This
area?
is my big prayer. I want the leadership pipeline to be as ubiquitous and as common as VBS. It ought to be the natural rhythm of every church to invest in and raise up leaders. It ought to just be a part of the culture. And that's my prayer, is that it will be as common in the church as Vacation Bible School. And then through that, I believe we'll see God work in miraculous ways.
So be at Summit, correct?
Be at Summit.
That's right. And if they can't, they can get in contact with you?
They can get in contact with me. It will all be available on our website.
Okay, great.
Yep.
If you had to tell a person that's listening right now that says, wow, I really want to do something different in my church with leadership, what could they start like today doing to help set them kind of on this path?
I would find good podcasts to listen to get started. There are some great leadership podcasts. But the number one issue for the start, though, is spiritual disciplines. As we were working on collaborative meetings across the state over, if you're going to invest in leaders, where do you need to start? It is always with the spiritual disciplines: how to study God's word, how to understand God's word, how to pray, how to fast. And so if somebody's wanting to get started today, I think that's where I would start. And in my quiet time, I would focus on God's design for leadership. And I would really hone in and dial in my spiritual disciplines so I can be sensitive to what God's calling me to do.
I know we have pastors who watch this and pastors who may be thinking, hey, Josh did this doctorate program. Should I do it? What are some benefits that you received from going through that process?
Oh, I loved it. I did my DMin at New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary, and because I had the non-traditional path, I actually got to be in person in seminary and interact with people. But the difference between the masters is there's a lot of theoretical in the masters. Not that it's not practical, but you learn a lot of knowledge things. The DMin stuff is all practical. Every single course that I took was immediately practical in ministry.
So how many times did you go to New Orleans?
Once a semester.
Once a semester.
For about 3 years.
And
you could do it quicker than that, but I got a wife and kids and a job. So.
Right, exactly. And the rest of it, basically, they host it through Zoom.
No, I didn't do any online.
Yeah.
So
you did it all in person.
I did all in person. You go down once a semester for a seminar. You're usually there 3-4 days, and you'll have all these assignments, these books to read before you show up, and then papers to write after the seminar.
Right.
So,
good deal. And your dissertation was basically on this.
My dissertation was the church campaign.
Yeah,
it was the 5 sermons that are in the sermon series.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, and we are looking forward to seeing what God does.
Thank you guys for having me. It's an honor.
Y'all plan on being there at Summit.
Yes.
It's going to be a great time.